The galaxy had many rulers, but none more feared than the alien queen. Her name was whispered in the dark halls of broken empires, carried on the breath of slaves and soldiers alike. She was not simply a monarch, she was a storm given flesh. Her skin shimmered green beneath the crowns of gold she wore, her voice rolled like thunder, and her eyes cut deeper than blades. Whole civilizations trembled when her fleets appeared in the skies above their worlds. Kings surrendered at the sound of her name. Armies threw down their weapons rather than face her wrath. To resist her was to invite death. To kneel was survival. And yet when her empire stretched its shadow across the stars, there was one place she had not yet conquered. Earth. The Queen's ships came like falling suns, black metal carving across the night skies. Cities on distant colonies crumbled when they saw her banners. Alien races who had long feared her whispered warnings, kneel or perish. But Earth was different. Humanity did not know how to kneel. And when the Queen sent her heralds to demand submission, one man stepped forward, alone, unarmed, and unafraid. The court was filled with hundreds of witnesses. Alien lords from conquered worlds stood in silence, their bodies trembling as they bowed low. Guards in crimson armor lined the hall, their weapons glowing with blue fire. And at the center, upon a throne carved of light and metal, sat the alien queen herself. Her crown caught the beams of the stars above. Her gown flowed like rivers of silk, and her gaze pierced all who dared to look upon her. When the human entered, the chamber fell into silence. He was not a soldier wrapped in armor. He was not a king wrapped in jewels. He was just a man, his step steady, his face calm. Every eye turned to him in disbelief. Every heart whispered the same thought. He will kneel. The Queen leaned forward on her throne. Her voice filled the chamber, sharp as blades. Human of Earth, you stand in my presence. The galaxy kneels before me. Will you? The man's reply came soft but unshaken. No. Gasps echoed through the court. Even the guards shifted uneasily, their armor clinking in the silence. No one had spoken that word to the Queen in centuries. No one had dared, for to deny her was to call death upon oneself. The Queen rose slowly from her throne, her height towering, her gown shimmering with firelight. She stepped down each stair with the weight of a world behind her. Do you understand what you say? She demanded. Her emerald face was close now, her crown gleaming like a burning sun. Do you understand that all who defy me are destroyed? The man's eyes did not waver. I understand, but humanity does not kneel. The Queen studied him as if he were some strange creature she had never seen. Around them, the courtiers shook in fear. They expected lightning to fall from her hands, for guards to cut him down where he stood. But no such command came. Instead, the Queen tilted her head, curious, almost amused. You are fragile, she whispered, her voice soft but carrying to every corner of the hall. Your bones break. Your worlds are young. Your people are small beside the endless night. And yet, you stand. The man drew a breath. Yes, we stand. We always stand. The silence that followed was heavier than any sound. The courtiers stared. The guards tightened their grips, and the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. For the first time in memory, the alien queen's throne room had not broken a visitor. For the first time, fear had not claimed a heart. Her eyes narrowed, and, though her voice carried the calm of still waters, fury burned beneath it. You defy me before my empire, before the eyes of worlds I have conquered. Do you think your courage will save you? Do you think it will save your kind? The man's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. No. I think it will remind them. The Queen stiffened. She turned, her gaze sweeping over the courtiers, over the ambassadors from broken worlds, over the soldiers who had known nothing but obedience. Many lowered their heads, but some, just some, lifted their eyes toward the man. And in their eyes, for the first time in centuries, there was something dangerous. Hope. The Queen's fury shook the walls. Her crown blazed with light, Her gown whipped as if caught in storm winds. She raised her hand and the guards snapped to attention. The chamber shook with her power. But still the man stood tall, unafraid, and in that moment the galaxy trembled, not at her might, but at the defiance of one fragile human who refused to kneel. The throne room of the alien queen was unlike anything a human mind could imagine. It was built from crystal and fire, stretching into endless heights, glowing with strange light that seemed alive. Alien banners draped the walls, marked with symbols of power, reminders of worlds she had already crushed under her rule. The floor, reflected like a mirror, and each step echoed like thunder. In this place no visitor spoke loudly. Here, even whispers were swallowed by fear. The queen sat on her throne at the far end of the hall. She looked less like a ruler and more like a force of nature. Her crown of gold gleamed, her emerald skin glistened under the light, and her black eyes reflected the galaxy itself. Around her, guards stood tall, their weapons glowing, their faces hard as stone. Courtiers and servants from 100 different species knelt low, trembling in silence. All bowed except one. The human stood in the middle of the hall. He was small compared to the towering aliens, fragile compared to their armor. But his posture was straight, his chin lifted. His eyes did not flinch, and his body did not shake. He did not belong here, but he did not look out of place. He looked defiant. The queen studied him with curiosity. Never before had she seen a creature so bold. Her voice rolled through the chamber, low and heavy, demanding attention. "You are the one who defies me. Speak, human. Tell me why you stand when all others kneel." The man's reply was simple. "Because I was not made to kneel." The words echoed across the hall like a blade cutting the air. Gasps spread among the courtiers. Some dared to lift their eyes. Others shrank further down. The guards tensed, expecting an order to strike him down. But the queen raised her hand, and silence returned. She descended from her throne, her gown trailing like a river of fire. Step by step, she closed the distance, her presence so powerful that even the air seemed to bend. She stopped only a breath away, towering over the man. "You are fragile," she whispered. "Your world is young. Your kind is small. Do you think your defiance matters? Do you believe you can change anything?" The man looked into her eyes, unbroken. "Yes, because fear only lasts until someone refuses to bow, and I refuse." The queen's lips curled, part rage, part amusement. Her empire had been built on the weight of terror, on the silence of submission. No species had ever dared such words in her court, yet here stood a single human, armed with nothing but his voice, shaking the order of her galaxy. The courtiers exchanged glances, their whispers too faint to hear. For the first time, seeds of doubt rippled through the hall. Could this fragile creature be right? Could one act of defiance spread across the stars? The queen noticed their looks and her fury deepened. She would not allow weakness to grow in her court. Her hand rose, glowing with energy that crackled like lightning. The ground shook beneath them. The guards raised their weapons, ready to end the human where he stood. The courtiers closed their eyes, expecting to see him destroyed, but the man did not move. His eyes never left hers. Even with death moments away, he stood firm. His voice carried one final time. "You can kill me, Queen, but you cannot kill the truth. And the truth is this: humanity will never kneel." The chamber fell still. Even the air seemed frozen. The queen's power burned bright in her hand, ready to strike, yet she paused. The human's courage unsettled her in ways no weapon ever had. For the first time in centuries, she hesitated. The guards looked to her for command. The courtiers waited with bated breath, but no order came. The queen lowered her hand slowly, her eyes locked on the man. Her fury had not faded, but behind it another emotion stirred. Something rare, something dangerous. Curiosity. The human had not been destroyed. He had not been broken. He had survived his first encounter with the Queen of Shadows, and in doing so, he had planted something new. In the galaxy's heart, hope. The queen returned to her throne in silence, but the silence was not peace. It was the silence before a storm. Her crown glowed faintly, her hands tightened on the arms of her throne, and her emerald eyes burned with fire. Never before had anyone dared such defiance. Never before had a creature so small, so fragile, stood in her court and refused to kneel. The chamber still echoed with the human's words, and those echoes cut her deeper than any blade. The courtiers sensed it. They bowed lower, pressing their foreheads to the floor, their bodies trembling. Even the guards, trained to show no fear, shifted uneasily as they waited for her wrath. The galaxy had always obeyed her without question. But now, because of one human, questions had begun to stir. She could not allow that seed of rebellion to grow. Her voice thundered, shaking the hall. "Bring the human forward." The guards seized him, pulling him closer to the steps of her throne. He did not resist, did not beg, did not cry out. He walked as if every chain on his wrists weighed nothing. His calm only deepened her fury. She leaned forward, her eyes locked on him. "You defy me in my own court. You mock me before my empire. Then you will learn what becomes of those who challenge the Queen of Shadows." She raised her hand and the hall darkened. The air grew heavy, pressing against every chest. From the walls, great doors opened and creatures stepped out. Monsters, bred in the depths of her empire, made to crush resistance. Their bodies were massive, their jaws lined with rows of teeth, their skin armored like stone. The courtiers gasped in terror as the beasts snarled, their eyes glowing red. "Face them," the queen commanded. "Show me if your courage still stands when death opens its jaws." The guards shoved him into the circle. The beasts circled, growling low, their claws scraping the floor. The human stood alone, his breath steady, his eyes sharp. For a moment, the court believed they would see him torn apart, another lesson etched in blood. But then, something unexpected happened. The first beast lunged. The man moved, not with panic, but with precision. He dodged, the creature's claws striking empty air. The second beast followed, and he rolled beneath its strike, rising to his feet again. He was faster than they expected, stronger than his fragile form suggested. The crowd leaned forward, unable to look away. The queen's fury deepened. She rose from her throne, her gown blazing with light. "Enough games!" she roared. Energy burst from her hands, striking the beasts with crackling power. Their bodies swelled, their eyes burned brighter. Their strength multiplied. They turned back toward the man with twice the fury. The human staggered as their blows came harder, their roars louder. Blood marked his skin, and yet he still stood. Each time they knocked him down, he rose again. His chest heaved, his body shook, but his spirit refused to break. And as the court watched, the truth became clear. The queen had unleashed her fury, but still, the human endured. She clenched her fists, her voice sharp as knives. "Why do you not fall? Why do you not beg?" The man raised his head, his eyes meeting hers even as the beasts closed in around him. His voice, ragged but steady, echoed through the hall. "Because fear is not stronger than will, and I will never kneel." The young chamber fell silent. Even the beasts hesitated, sensing something strange in his defiance. The courtiers looked at each other, whispers rising like sparks in the dark. A thought spread through them, quiet but dangerous. If he can endure the queen's rage, then perhaps we can too. The queen saw it in their eyes, the flicker of hope, the birth of rebellion. Her fury exploded. She struck the floor with her power, the entire hall shaking as cracks split the ground. The beasts roared, the guards shouted, but above it all her voice rang clear. "You are nothing, nothing but dust before the storm of my empire. You will break, human, and when you do, all who watch will learn what it means to defy me." But even as her rage filled the chamber, the man stood, battered and bleeding, yet unbroken. His very presence was a challenge she could not crush. And the more she tried, the stronger his defiance became. The Queen of Shadows, who had ruled through fear alone, had met her first wall of resistance. And though she stood taller, brighter, fiercer than any ruler the galaxy had ever known, She could not silence the truth that echoed louder than her fury. Humanity would not kneel. The beasts were dragged away, chained again behind the iron doors, their growls fading into silence. The guards stood stiff, their weapons trembling in their hands. The throne room, once the heart of fear, now felt unsteady, like a mountain cracking from within. The alien queen sat upon her throne, her emerald face burning with rage, but behind her fury there was something she would never admit aloud: unease. The human had not fallen. He had not begged. He had not broken. And the court had seen it. Whispers slithered through the hall like smoke. Alien lords leaned close to one another, speaking words too faint for her to hear, but she did not need to hear them. She could see it in their eyes. Doubt. The one thing her empire could not survive. Fear had ruled them for centuries. But now, they had witnessed defiance, and defiance was contagious. The queen rose, her gown trailing firelight across the floor. Her voice thundered to drown the whispers. "You see a stubborn fool," she declared. "You see a fragile creature who mistakes defiance for strength. Do not be deceived. Humanity will burn as all others have burned." The courtiers dropped, their gazes bowing lower, but she saw it. That faint spark of hesitation. That stolen glance toward the human still standing, bloodied yet unbowed. She could command silence, but she could not command their thoughts, and thoughts once freed spread like wildfire. The man wiped blood from his face, his breathing heavy but steady. He did not speak. He did not need to. His silence was louder than her fury. His body, broken yet upright, told the court a truth that cut sharper than any words. The queen's wrath could be endured. That night in the shadows of the palace, servants whispered his name. Guards who once stood proud spoke quietly to one another. Across the empire's networks, rumors spread like cracks in glass, rumors of a human who would not kneel. On distant worlds, slaves dared to look their masters in the eye. Rebellions that had slept for generations stirred in secret, all because one man had stood. The queen felt it. Power, once as solid as stone, now shifted beneath her feet. Her throne no longer carried the same weight. She summoned her council, alien generals who had commanded fleets and burned worlds in her name. They knelt before her, awaiting command, but she could see the questions hidden in their eyes. One general spoke carefully, his voice respectful yet edged with doubt. "My queen, the human should be executed swiftly. His defiance spreads like disease. A single spark can ignite fire." Across the stars, the queen's gaze sharpened. She wanted to destroy the human with her own hands, to crush him until nothing remained. But deep within, another thought gnawed at her. If she killed him too quickly, would his defiance become legend? Would his death plant hope deeper than his life ever could? She dismissed her counsel with a wave, her voice cold as ice. "He will not be executed, not yet." Alone in her chambers, she paced like a caged predator. Her reflection in the mirror glared back at her, crown gleaming, eyes burning. She had ruled for centuries through fear, and fear had always been enough. Until now. This human, fragile in body, had shown her empire something she could not erase: resistance. Meanwhile, the man sat in chains, locked in a dark cell far below the throne room. His body ached, his wounds throbbed, but his spirit was calm. He had seen the queen's rage. He had survived it. And more importantly, he had seen the eyes of those who watched. They were no longer empty. They were alive. He whispered to himself, "In the dark, they saw me stand. That's enough." And it was enough. For above, in hidden chambers, voices rose. Alien nobles debated in whispers whether the queen was losing her grip. Slave leaders on distant worlds sent secret signals, testing the chains that had bound them for centuries. Her empire, vast and unshakable, had begun to tremble. The cracks were small, but they were there, and cracks, once made, only grew. The queen returned to her throne the next morning, cloaked in fire, her crown blazing brighter than before. She spoke to her court with a voice that could shatter stone. She promised destruction, punishment, War without mercy. She swore that the humans' defiance was meaningless, that her empire was eternal. The words thundered, but her people no longer heard them as before. Because now they had seen something she could not hide. They had seen a man stand against her, and no amount of fury could erase that memory. The queen felt it in her bones. Her empire had been built on fear, but fear was dying, and once fear died, her throne would follow. The human sat chained in the deepest cell of the palace, but the chains could not hold his spirit. Word of his defiance spread faster than fire through dry grass. Servants whispered of him in the kitchens. Guards argued in hushed tones outside. The barracks and across the stars, messages carried by secret channels told the tale of the man who had stood before the alien queen and refused to kneel. His silence had been louder than her fury. His defiance had become a spark, and sparks once born could not be contained. The queen knew it. She sat on her throne, cloaked in light and fury, but her empire trembled beneath her. Her advisors argued endlessly, their voices filling the council chamber. Some urged her to execute the human at once, to erase his image before hope grew any stronger. Others warned that killing him would only make him a martyr, a symbol too powerful to destroy. She listened, but her emerald face remained cold. She hated that a single fragile creature had placed her on this edge. At last she silenced them with a wave of her hand. He will face me again, this time before all the stars. The announcement shook the galaxy. A great gathering was called. Lords, rulers, slaves, and soldiers from 100 conquered worlds were summoned to witness. The queen promised that all would see the human's spirit broken, that his defiance would end in her hall. She believed that crushing him in public would restore her reign of fear. Yet beneath her words, unease gnawed at her, for she remembered the look in his eyes, and it haunted her more than any rebellion. The day arrived. The throne room was packed, with alien races from every corner of the empire. The air was heavy with tension, the silence so deep that each footstep echoed like thunder. The queen entered in blazing majesty, her crown glowing, her gown flowing with firelight. Behind her, the human was dragged forward in chains, his face marked by bruises. His body weakened but not broken. He did not bow. He did not stumble. His steps were steady. The queen's voice rang across the chamber. You who stand against me, you who mock my empire, today your defiance ends. Bow, and you will live. Refuse, and your death will be eternal. The hall waited, breathless. All eyes turned to him, expecting him to tremble, to falter. But the man lifted his head and his words rang clear. I told you before and I tell you now, humanity will never kneel. The crowd gasped, voices rippling like waves across the hall. Some shouted in shock, others whispered in awe. The guards tightened their grip on their weapons, but their eyes betrayed unease. For the second time, he had spoken the forbidden truth in the heart of her empire. And this time the galaxy was listening. The queen rose, her fury shaking the walls. She raised her hands, power crackling like lightning, ready to crush him where he stood. But before she could strike, voices rose from the crowd. Quiet at first, then louder. Aliens from conquered worlds, slaves who had lived lifetimes in chains, shouted a single word that echoed across the hall. No. It began with one voice, then two, then dozens. No. The sound grew, a storm breaking through silence. For centuries, the queen's court had known only submission, but now, because of one human, defiance spread like wildfire. Lords who had once bowed lowered their heads no longer. Soldiers shifted, their hands shaking on their weapons. Even her own guards exchanged uneasy glances. The queen's fury burned brighter, but she felt it, her grip slipping. Fear had been her weapon, but fear was failing. The human looked at her one last time, his voice steady even in chains. You ruled through terror, but terror dies the moment someone stands. I stood, and now they will too. The queen's crown blazed with rage, her power striking the air like fire. But the damage was done. The galaxy had seen. The turning point had come. and no storm, no crown, no throne could erase it. The throne room shook with echoes of rebellion. The queen stood high on her platform, her crown blazing like a star, but for the first time in centuries her voice did not silence the hall. The shouts of defiance from the crowd still rang in the air. The human, though chained and bloodied, had turned her empire into something she had never faced before. Not submission, not silence, but resistance. Her fury was boundless. Energy crackled at her fingertips, fire spilled across the floor, and the walls groaned under her power. Yet even as her wrath thundered, her empire slipped further from her grasp. She could destroy the man before her, erase him in a single heartbeat. But she knew the truth. His death would not end this fire. It would spread it. He had become more than a man. He had become a symbol. The guards looked uneasy. Their weapons were ready, but their eyes betrayed hesitation. Some glanced at each other, some at the crowd. They had lived in fear of her all their lives, but now they too had heard the human's words. If he could stand, why couldn't they? The queen saw it in their eyes, and it chilled her more than any rebellion. She was losing not just her subjects, but her own soldiers. The man lifted his head, chains clinking softly, his voice calm though his body shook with exhaustion. "You can kill me, queen, but you cannot kill what I've started. Your throne is built on fear, and fear is breaking." The queen's rage burned brighter, but in the deepest part of her heart, she knew his words were true. She had ruled by terror, but terror was fragile. It crumbled the moment courage appeared. And courage had appeared in the unlikeliest of places. A human who had nothing, no army, no crown, no weapon, only will. The council of alien lords, who had once bowed so low, now shifted uneasily. Some raised their heads, daring to look directly at her. One of them, an elder whose world had been conquered generations ago, whispered loudly enough for all to hear, "If he will not kneel, why should we?" The hall erupted. Shouts of rebellion rose from every corner. Guards hesitated, courtiers cried out, and the queen's fury roared louder than ever. Power surged through her veins, her voice striking like thunder. "Silence, you dare defy me? I am the Queen of Shadows. I am the storm that rules the stars." But even as she screamed, the words felt hollow. The galaxy had heard something stronger. The human, beaten but unbroken, stood taller in his chains. His silence was enough now, his presence more powerful than her fire. The galaxy was watching, and what they saw was not her throne, but his defiance. She turned her gaze on him one final time. In her emerald eyes burned fury. Yes, but behind the fury flickered something else, something rare and dangerous. Respect. He had faced her power, survived her wrath, and in doing so had shaken her empire in ways armies never had. The queen raised her hand, but this time she did not strike. Instead, she lowered it slowly, her gown swirling around her feet as she returned to her throne. Her voice, cold as steel, filled the hall. "Take him away. Let the galaxy see him live. Let them see what becomes of those who defy me." The guards obeyed, but their steps were hesitant. The man was dragged from the hall, his head still high, his eyes unbroken. Behind him, the crowd roared, not in fear, but in defiance. The sound rattled the walls, a storm far greater than the queen's own. As the doors closed, the queen sat alone upon her throne, her crown burning bright, but her empire trembling beneath her. She had kept her seat, but she had lost something greater. She had lost control of fear. The galaxy outside began to stir. On distant planets, slaves raised their heads. On conquered worlds, whispers of rebellion grew into open shouts. Fleets that had once flown her banner now questioned their loyalty. The fire had begun, and nothing she could do would stop it. And the human, though locked away, though chained, had already won. He was no longer just a man. He was a story, a legend, a spark that would blaze across the stars. The galaxy trembled still. But now, it was not trembling at the queen. It was trembling at humanity.